My topic is creating the intelligent digital enterprise. And I will get starting straight away. It is my belief that a new industrial revolution is happening around us, and the decision that you will make today is going to have significant impact on your business. The decision that you make today around your platforms, around your architecture, around your business model, around your operating model, and around your innovation curve will determine whether you are a disruptor or one that is being disrupted. And decisions around cloud, microservices, AI, machine learning, IoT, all of those decisions, and as they become ubiquitous across your organization, they will pose a lot of challenges. Those challenges are going to be around security. Challenges are going to be around data. There'll be challenges around complex workflows, how you work across the organization, but outside the boundaries of your organization. But these symbiotic technologies will also create new opportunities. And these opportunities are about creating the new digital enterprise. But what does that mean? I bet every single one of you here is going through a digital transformation. If you just put your hand up, pretty much everyone here is going through digital transformation. And it is suffice to say that some of you are so deep in your transformation, I would even classify you as a technology company. Because you have been embedded in that transformation, and it's a continuum of transformation you're going through. But to truly understand that transformation, which, by the way, is happening at warp speed, I want to ask 3 questions and explore those 3 questions with you. And these questions are probably in the minds of you and certainly in the media today. The first question I have is, will AI take or make our jobs? And automation. 2, now that everyone is digital, what's the comparative advantage? How do we compete in a world where everyone is digital? And the third area is around IT. Is your IT enabled in order to continue that digital journey? So every day, we open the newspaper and we see these headlines, horrific headlines. 10,000 jobs are going away, 50,000 jobs are going away. I read about the other day where there's a factory in Europe, that's where I'm from, not local here, by the way. And the factory was very excited, but the community was extremely excited because there was a perception there would be thousands of jobs, and there were 4 people that was hired only. 1 to start the factory, 1 to switch off the machine, the robots, and 2 people on standby. That was it. And when you talk about these topics, the air is almost sucked out the room because these are frightening things for people as well. So is this really true that automation and AI is going to have this impact? And what's the extent of this impact? What does robotics do? What does cognitive do on society, on our businesses, on our industry? And more importantly, what's the impact onto our employees? Because we are all employees and people at the end of the day. And how do we prepare a future where machine and robots work together? Over the last 20 years, it's the industrial sector that has been the creator and the predominant user of robotics. But that has changed now, because we are in the midst of a decade of research and technology advancement that have led to machine learning, artificial intelligence, and libraries of open source technology, which you now have access to. You could go online and have access to technology that was worth millions and hundreds of millions of dollars only last year because it's become ubiquitous and available. We have achieved sophisticated neural networks, voice and image recognition. We have achieved bots that sound like humans. And we have created cognitive technology that are winning in Jeopardy, Go, and chess. And we have created appliances that are really changing the experiences of our lives and making things much more easier, more comfortable. And collectively, these advancements in research and technology have made AI and robotics mainstream now, not for the few, but for the many. IBM recently partnered with MIT, and we did a research around AI and the impact of AI on society. And we came to the conclusion together that 10% of work, all the work in the world, will be eliminated as a result of AI. No one wants to say this, but that's the fact. But 100% of all work will be impacted, will be changed as a result of AI. Another report that was recently done, that 60% of the world's profession will be impacted by automation, and 30% of that can be fully automated. And only 5% of the world's population, in terms of worker population, will be eliminated. Quite scary, right? How do we train for the future? But at the same time, actually, it's not a scary future, it's a positive future. Because if you look at the impact of AI and automation, it is predicted that the impact will be between 1 and 1.5% of global productivity, so GDP increases globally. Huge impact. And just like technology has done throughout history, example, mobile apps created an ecosystem of developers, Android, Windows, iOS developers, created manufacturers of handsets, created accessories, created the app stores, created marketing firms, SMS firms, retail stores. AI will also create professions and livelihood. It's just that we need to prepare for that profession and livelihood and requiring different skills. Like embedded systems, AI will be infused into everything that we do, starting off with the electronic industry, microprocessors, on the edge, connected devices, led by software and patterns. And we are already experiencing benefit of AI and machine learning in services and products. Just 3 products here. Skype, some of you use Skype, I'm sure. Skype now has machine learning simultaneous translation. Google Bud, that allows you to translate in real time using machine. And I have to give an advertising for IBM Watson, which is using cognitive computing to solve some of the big challenges in healthcare. So we are already seeing this, but this level of AI integration will be at the fabric of all products in the future, and in microprocessors to software to cloud services. So to move to AI is really about understanding what are the processes that machines do really, really well, and what are the processes that humans add real value. And it's about finding a world where you could improve, optimize, augment, and automate. Not just one replacing another, but it's working together for a better outcome experience, and greater efficiency. And it is about a shift, an important shift, shifting from just using data for insights and shifting to a world where you could optimize and automate large processes end to end. And doing this through a frictionless integration. And automation and AI will create new opportunities, both for governments, society, and businesses. And the current prediction is, which is pretty close, most of the research you see, with a delta of few trillion, by the way, is between 7 and 13 trillion of new value that will be created in the future. So, leading to my next question, now that everyone is digital and all of you are digital here, what's the comparative advantage? How do you differentiate in this digital world? So, here is an example of the retail industry, because I know there's many of you here from the retail industry. So if you take, for example, Macy's, Target, Sears, Nordstrom, JCPenney, all great, awesome companies. All have been around for more than 100 years, and they have played a pivotal role in defining the American retail culture. And I will go as far as saying has played a pivotal role in defining retail cultures around the world, especially in Asia and Europe. They have been innovative in their time, and they have employed more than 1 million people throughout their supply chain. Yet, between 2006 and today, their market cap has been declining. In fact, if you look at Sears and JCPenney them together, it has declined more than 90%. Now, some of you may argue to say they are not digital. And I think that is an answer which is a very simple answer, but that's not correct. Because they have invested significant amount. In fact, they've invested more than $70 billion between them in tablet computing, online channels, mobile phones, IoTs, kiosks. So they've invested huge amount, but they are still declining their market cap. And you would think that them being the dominant players with large presence in our high street, with large workforce, customer base and understanding and cultural fit, that they have more advantages than your new entrants. But if you look at the likes of the Alibabas of the world and the likes of the Amazon of the world, they are growing at exponential rate. In fact, Alibaba recently had their first day of $25 billion sale day. $25 billion in one day sale. That's a hell of a lot of money in one day. And that is not just because they're born in the cloud or because they're digital. They have won the mind share of the consumer and the wallet. Well, it is my belief that why they are succeeding in this retail world, it's for 3 reasons. They have new business models that are disruptive, technology-based, and data-driven. Disruptive, data-driven business model. And they are obsessed with customer experience, differentiated customer experience. And they have used that customer experience to hold you as a customer, and you trust them and you spend your money with them. 2, their brand is their experience. And that experience is valued by their consumers, made up of many end-to-end components, from logistics, online channel, physical channel, in-day service, mobile, same day, customer service, all combined together to create a brand. Because the same product can be bought anywhere. Sometimes they don't have a product, but it's their brand which brings them together. And they are obsessively, again, creating frictionless customer experience, connecting those components together. And the last area that they are doing is they are built for speed and continuous innovation, recognizing that the innovation curve is a continuum. They're continuously experimenting, failing fast, learning, adapting, and becoming relevant for the different generation of buyers. So, what's the next level of differentiation? If everyone now is digital, what's next? So recognizing that these companies are not going to stand still, they're going to continuously innovate, continuously challenge the status quo. They are going to adopt, coming back to my first point, AI. More and more AI will be infused into the fabric of their organization. And they'll infuse AI technology into their products, into their service, into their delivery model, into their operating model. They understand how to democratize technology and data. They understand how to make themselves smarter, healthier, perhaps even happier society, because they want to be part of that society. And therefore, they are going to create experiences and continuously create experiences for the one and a shared experience for many based on their evolution, their disruption, and their continuous innovation. So now I move to the third question, which is, how are we preparing ourselves for AI, automation, and our next phase of digital? And to answer this question, I am delighted today to have a distinguished panel today, and I would like to invite them over to have a conversation with me and share their experience. So please give them a clap. Thank you, Fab. Thank you, Klaus. Thank you. It'll be nice to see you again. Please have a seat. Thank you very much for joining me here. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you a few questions. This is just a discussion. Audience, feel free to ask the questions to our panelists. Before, after, or during. This is your time. I would really appreciate it if I ask you a question, if you just tell me your name, what do you do for your organization, and then feel free to jump in, because I'm really interested in getting your real life experience, things that have worked and have not worked, right? So I'm really interested in things that haven't worked, actually, more than things that have worked. So let me start with the first question. I hear this all the time, which is about culture. Right? Because culture drives innovation. And as a company ourselves in IBM, we've been working, at least I've been working the last 6 years in trying to drive the culture of more and more innovation, dragging it sometimes. Some people just go really fast, trying to help motivate, inspire. What are you doing to drive a cultural change of innovation within your organization? And what has worked and what has not worked? If you and then I'm opening this up to anyone on this panel. David?
I'll go first. So my name's David Bean. I'm the CIO and Vice President of Lazy Boy. We're a 90-year-old home furnishings company headquartered in Monroe, Michigan. I've been there 5.5 months. So I'm just learning where the bathroom is, right? And now you're asking me about culture, right? I would say this about culture. And I said this in my previous roles too, and I can get into that if you wanted me to later, but culture eats strategy for lunch, right? if you don't have a culture that's driving your organization and a vision that inspires people to do things that they never thought possible, then you're going to have, I don't care what strategy you have, it's not going to work. So in my short 5.5 months at Lazy Boy, what I've been doing is talking to my IT team and talking to the other executives in the company about how are we starting to think like an IT company. Lazy Boy is a great company. It's 90 years old. It's done very well. But how do we start? Your presentation was spot on. I took a lot of pictures of your slides. I hope you can share them with us.
Sure.
It was really about how do we become digital? How do we become innovative? We are innovative, but how do we think more like a tech company? And that's a challenge, especially when you're 90 years old and you have a very diverse culture. But so that's what I'm really trying to drive. And I'll come back next year and tell you if it worked. How's that?
But you also have some advantages because you're 90 years old, right? You have heritage that really defines you, and some things will never change, which for the good reasons, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. We have, Lazy Boy is very fortunate. It has an iconic brand.
Yeah.
You say Lazy Boy, people have this picture in their head, right?
Yeah.
So we try to use that as an advantage. Sometimes it's a disadvantage, but we have this culture, we have this heritage, we have this passion around our products, and so that does help. But with, we were talking about in our panel earlier, in our group earlier today, we have people in the twilight of their career and people coming in.
Yeah.
And how do you get them to merge together? And it's really all about culture.
Yeah.
At Lazy Boy, one of the things we have, and it's really amazing, I invite you all to come. We have an incredible campus in Monroe, Michigan. Just built this brand new state-of-the-art building 2 years ago. And it's unbelievable. Google came and said, we out-Google Google.
Great.
It's this great big glass building on this beautiful campus. No assigned seats. It's just everything's in neighborhoods. It's really amazing. And that's driving the culture too, a culture of collaboration, communication.
Environment.
Technology. Yeah, it's the environment. It's very,
right.
It speaks of innovation. But it's a journey. This is a marathon, and we'll see how we go.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
Jeff Thomas. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Smithfield Foods. I've been with my company about 5 years, so I've had a little more time, and I actually know where the bathroom is, and I've actually been able to visit a lot of interesting places where you wouldn't think there were bathrooms. But as part of it, I guess when you talk about culture, culture is really about bacon. And you're going to say, why bacon? Well, our company, Smithfield Foods, we are known for bacon. That's probably our best-selling product. People love bacon. But what it is, it's that love of bacon. I've heard many people say, I had a good friend of mine, his daughter decided she wanted to be vegetarian until she found out she could not eat bacon. And that changed her view of vegetarianism at that point. Bacon is one of those things that everybody likes. Well, in a culture, in an IT culture, IT needs to be something everybody likes. And that's the biggest issue we face, is that in most companies, IT is a janitorial service, or it's a thing I have to do, or they don't move fast enough, or they don't give me what I need, or they're the group that says no. And the real change, I think, from a culture, and this is what, in our company, we've gone through a transformation. We're about 8 months from being without a data center, being a full cloud company without physical data centers, really focused on how we as IT provide solutions as quickly as possible and make it frictionless for a person to get an infrastructure they need. Can we spin up an environment? Yes. When can we have it? And they're expecting the 6 to 8 month rule. And we say we can have it for you tomorrow. We can have it for you this afternoon. We can architect it in 2 days for you. So all of a sudden now my discussion points are more about how fast I can do it. And I'm actually in some cases providing a service better than outside vendors. And so the culture we've built is a culture that IT, first of all, provides a service, and we have the infrastructure, and we have all the pieces, parts to provide that service that a digital enterprise needs. And if you can't provide that service, you then are really competing against your shadow IT, you're competing against your cloud solution providers, and at that point you are irrelevant within the company's discussions because you can't provide it. So one of the cultural changes is first within IT, which is getting the guy who has been doing mainframe or been doing servers his whole life to say, I can learn cloud, I want to learn cloud, and I have a future if I learn cloud. And if they don't, helping them understand where there's plenty of things to do within IT that have nothing to do with administration of servers that we can move them into, that give them ability to use their knowledge and their information that they have in a way, or maybe even it's a chance for them to go and move into other parts of the business where they maybe have collected knowledge in a mainframe world that they can help translate into a business context. Because they really have a lot of keys to the kingdom in terms of business process, that we then move them out of the IT space into maybe a more business-facing role. But the culture is really it, that bacon, which everybody loves. You have to get IT to that point within the company to be really successful.
Great, thank you.
My turn?
Yes, please.
Klaus Janson, Chief Architect / CTO for Aetna. I'm going to start here and say, if you want to change culture, you have to change the conversation. But how often do we go about trying to change culture by taking action or laying out a plan, etc.? You can't. The two things that won't work is it won't work to believe that it will fix itself, because it won't. Right? Culture never fixes itself. The other thing that doesn't work is to be impatient. When I interviewed for the job I have now, I've been there 3 years, I actually literally told the VP of HR that interviewed me and said, by the way, if you don't want to give me 5 years, you probably shouldn't hire me. In this day and age, 5 years is an eternity. Because who can think, oh, it's 5 years? I mean, technology will have changed many, many times in 5 years. The problem with people is they don't want to change as fast as technology. You can't make them. So if you don't have the patience and the talent to manage the dual changes of speed of people and technology, you're going to have a problem. So the way I went about it was I started changing the conversation. I'm 3 years into a different kind of conversation. I had a 5-year roadmap. The first stage was change what we do. Now, that's a conversation, because you actually have to sit down with people and make them reflect on what they do today and why that may not be what they need to do tomorrow. You can't tell them that they have to go do something different, because you're going to drop your talent on the floor. They're either going to leave or they're going to keep doing what they did before. That doesn't work. You have to sit down and have the conversation with them why they have to be different. By the way, architects are rather stubborn. So taking a couple of hundred architects and trying to tell them they have to do something different is hard. The next thing you got to do is you have to change how they think. You're on the way if you can make them reflect on what they do and why they need to do that differently. But you also have to change their mindset. You talked a lot about the fact that you use bacon as your analogy. If you can't make the people you want to change think about themselves why we need to change and what it is we're trying to achieve, so think about the outcome and not the process, you're not going to be able to change the culture. Right. And if you get that far, now you can start changing the way that they influence, which is when you touch the rest of the organization. But the first thing that everybody was all over me about, it's so great that you've landed here, Klaus, because now you can fix all the problems with everybody else. I got news for you. The first thing you have to change is yourself, because if you're not willing to change, don't expect anybody else to. You have to start by changing the conversation.
Great point, Klaus. Moving to Antonio, thank you for joining us.
Apologies for being late.
No problem at all. You were here and in perfect timing. Homeland security, that's a pretty big job you have. You also have, it's interesting about your culture, right? Because, how would you describe your culture there? Does it change based on government or?
It's federal government, and you're spending taxpayers' money, so trying to change anything up there is going to be a monumental task.
Yes.
And I don't try to really do a lot of changes with regards to, how the government operates, because as you know, each administration is going to be doing things a little bit differently.
Yes.
But one of the things I try to do is try and convince leadership, and White House, the Hill, and the people I work directly for, that certain technologies we need to be investing in. And when it comes to spending taxpayers' money, I mean, again, it's a tough argument or discussion to have with leadership because you're spending taxpayers' funds. And it has to be something that's going to be providing value across the board, and not just within DHS, but it has to be something that can be consumed by the entire federal government.
Right.
So the biggest challenge for me is finding that disruptive technology that I can apply, and not only that, but I have to make the argument that, hey, look, this is in the best interest of the entire country.
Yeah.
We can protect our borders better. Right? We can make people feel safer when they fly, those type of things. But as far as culture goes, you know, I don't have a lot of heavy staff in the Fed's space that do this work as far as the industry has. Finding the same skill set that you'll find in the industry and federal government is very difficult to do. I just can't pay as well, put it that way.
Right.
You know, for example, I've been looking for a solution architect for the last year and a half. I could not convince anyone to join the government and take a pay cut, almost 50%, to come and work in the government as a solution architect. So what I have to
That's
do
tough.
is, yes, I got to go out and contract, find vendors that are willing to bring that skill set in and work for me.
So I just want to come back to a point which you made, Antonio, and just stay here. You talked about finding technology that's going to really drive value across the board, that you could scale. What's the process that you go about in order to convince your stakeholders, right? Because you've got more stakeholders than perhaps Klaus or David have, right? I'm sure they have some stakeholders, but it's a little bit different in your parts of the world. And by the time you may convince someone, the government may have changed, right? So how do you keep up with innovation and actually get things out there that are actually going to drive change and change people's lives? And what have you learned from it, and what are you doing?
You know, attending events like this helps me a lot because I can take information I learned from these events, and this is what I've been doing because I've been trying to stand up a new organization which Congress is on the verge of approving, and I will be the CIO for that new organization. So I need to make sure I stay on the leading edge of technologies.
Right.
So when I present my business case back to the Hill, it would make sense. It would include things such as machine learning, deep learning, which I have got a lot of interest in because of the amount of data that I'm going to be inheriting pretty soon.
Oh, great.
So deep learning is something I really need to be looking into and learning a lot more about. And like we discussed earlier in the roundtable, trying to sell AI to leadership has been very difficult.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. It's a concept that just you know,
It's hard
they
to
were able
understand.
to get the cloud. Yeah, okay, I got the cloud. They got DevOps, but for some reason there's a big struggle with AI. So I'm still working on that. But you know, the key here is you're spending taxpayers' money. So I got to tread very carefully. And when I want to find, you know, what's going on in industry, I have to convince my ethics office to make a trip out to something like this. Yes, it provides value to DHS, right? And they can approve a trip out here because, again, I'm spending taxpayers' money.
Sure.
And I'm not thinking about profitability. I'm not thinking about survivability of the government. That's going to be there. The key here is being cost efficient and looking at things that can provide really high level of return for their investment.
Sure.
Right? And as a taxpayer, I think that's what everyone would love to see. Right? I don't want to go out and build a DevOps system out there just for the sake of building a DevOps system.
Yeah.
Right? I have to fail and fail quickly, but I can't do it too often. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can go out there, you can do these things, but at some point you have to deliver, and you have to deliver soon.
Yeah.
Right? I like the idea of failing quick and failing fast, you know, but you can't keep doing that very often.
Sure.
Because eventually you're going to have a finger pointed at you, and then you're probably going to be on the Washington Post, which you don't want to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good to know that the taxpayers' money has been spent very wisely with you. I think we'll all be very happy with that. The next question I have is, and this is for these three gentlemen here, where do you see AI, automation, robotics within your organization, right? How are you scaling it or not scaling it? Do you have use cases that you are tackling? How are you proving the value, right? Because proving the value, whether you're in a government or whether you're in a private institution, you have to prove the value, you have to prove the ROI, and having ROI is not enough, it's having ROI now, and the patience of executives more, it's becoming less and less, I've noticed, over the last few years. So if you could share with me your experience with that, some of the use cases that you're finding transformative, and how you're scaling it, not just in a lab.
Would it be all right if we had just one follow-up or two on the previous topic?
Sure, please. Of course.
I'm really fascinated.
Can someone give a microphone to this gentleman, please, or?
Here you go.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean that.
No, please.
You said it'd be okay to interject.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I mean, what's fascinating, and the topic's fascinating, by the way, on the culture, and I struggle with it all the time. But what I'd like to understand, and I'm not sure if there's a right answer, is who owns the leadership aspect of driving culture? And with the market driving forces that are out there, we're kind of getting pushed into this cross-functional, non-siloed approach that none of us grew up in. So how do you do that? Because technology itself is ones and zeros. It doesn't have emotions and feelings and worried about transparency. But when you push people together in a way that business is driving and market forces are impacting, who's responsible at your companies to really take the reins and drive that culture? Just curious.
No, go ahead. At Lazy Boy, we have a phenomenal CEO, Kurt Darrow, who was really kind of spearheading the culture change and driving the conversation around culture. But in my mind, it's not only the executive team, right, me and the other C-level folks, but it's got to come from within the whole organization. I think it starts at the CEO, but it also has to come in from our entry-level folks as well. What is the culture you want to live in? And again, I think I talk about this beautiful campus that Lazy Boy built. I think that was built by the CEO and the board and everybody a couple of years ago because they wanted to drive that conversation about culture and innovation. And like you said, it takes a long time. You said 5 years, right? It's a long-term conversation, but I think it's got to be everybody. It's got to be spearheaded by the CEO and the executives, but it's got to be driven down into the organization, and it's got to be driven up from our newest employees, our newest teammates as well. And so it's that whole conversation, it's that whole group of people, and it's about really, and again, I'm going to say it this way, it's about a vision that other people can be inspired by and want to do more than they ever thought they could do because of that vision and that culture.
I'm going to give you a controversial answer. It's my MO, in case you hadn't figured it out. In my mind, it is the person that steps up to be the chief storyteller of the organization. Somebody has to step up, be courageous enough, experienced enough, and to some degree insane enough to say, if nobody else will step up, I will. But it has to be someone who understands storytelling. And storytelling is not just telling a story, it's telling a story with a purpose. So on the not so good days, I might refer to myself as a chief storyteller. In our organization, from an IT perspective, it's me. Because I was insane enough to say, if nobody else wants to, I will. But you have to find somebody who wants to do that, who is willing to do it for 5 bloody years, and who knows how to tell stories.
Great, thank you.
Let me provide some color and texture. I was a chief learning officer for 15 years. Ultimately, if you want to create change, you got to create the ability for people to feel they're part of the process. And the way you do that effectively is you create a skill set, you create competency, you begin to get them to think that they are in it, obviously because it's a career move, it's a career change, absolutely. And you factor not one business cycle, you actually factor 2 business cycles, because the ultimate is to create functionalities, but as well as hybrids. That's the ultimate.
Yeah, good, read.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a great answer.
Another question here?
Yeah, I want to come back to, unless you want to.
Can we do one more?
Please.
All right, I'm the CEO and Chief Storyteller. in our company. I think I do a pretty good job, but you'd have to talk to other people in the company to find out the answer to that. I have a burning question for you guys. You're all on the technology side. I think I do a great job of all the technology people loving each other, supporting each other. They're very much part of the culture.
Okay.
I think I do a good job of all the sales and business development people loving each other and getting along. And everything seems to go really smooth until all of a sudden sales in the field, they need something and they need it immediately or yesterday. And all of a sudden, there's that cultural break. Have any of you gentlemen found the secret to avoiding that momentary cultural break?
I'll give you my answer, and I've seen this not just. I've lived the government world too. I think two of these up here both lived the government world. I've lived that too, and I've also now been in the corporate world for about 5 years. I think the real key there is that when you build the culture, you build flexibility into it. And what happens is sometimes we build this great company, and we build all these wonderful processes. We build all this way we do things, and then the first thing that happens is when somebody throws in that bomb that says, but I need it yesterday, and it doesn't meet any of the timelines. And one of the great books out there I remember reading many years ago was called The Goal. And one of the concepts in there is that flexibility and that doing it with the end in mind. And if the company understands that we have processes, we have structures, we have all this stuff, but if we can meet that end in mind, which is maybe meeting the customer's need, or it's meeting a certain goal, or if it's the sales guys understand and everybody understands that, then the company and the processes flex to support that. But if you don't build that, and if you build it as a real rigid structure that says, you have to do this, you have to do that, and if you don't do this, the world ends, because we love controls, is understanding, okay, what is really a control that is needed, and what is something we put in place because I really don't like to be scared, or I don't like to be surprised. So I think that's the key piece is I know on the IT side, what we've really done is we've really made it flexible, which is to say, I've got a process that says you need to do this, but if you come in and you say I need it tomorrow, we then have a way to handle that without it being a fire drill. So we understand how to rapidly respond, and it becomes as much a part of the culture, but we don't say that's an everyday thing. So we try to make sure we understand, hey, we will help, here's how we will do it, we'll get it to you, but also say, but what that does is here's the impact. And if there's some downstream impacts, you'll be able to communicate that out and say, as the chief storyteller, you can say, I'm glad that you went out and made that sale, but that sale may have actually cost us more than what you think you just gained. And you need to have that conversation back. And it's not just the ask, but it's the feedback process in that, which is you have the flexibility and the feedback out. Because if you have someone who comes and they'll learn this habit very quickly, I can always throw that bomb right in the middle and everybody will react and we become a great firefighting organization. But if there's never that feedback says, we don't firefight, we did it once because of this, but we will not do it again. That's where that's where that storyteller needs to come in and really push back in that organization.
I'd say there are three things you need and one thing you don't need. You need vision, because if you don't have vision, there's nobody to follow. That's obvious. You need conviction. Somebody needs to go into the breach and have people follow them. And if you're not convinced about your own beliefs, then you can't have people follow you. And you need technical mastery. That's obvious. What you don't need, and you touched on it, but I'm just going to call it out. You don't need the fear of uncertainty. The biggest inhibitor to cultural change is people need to be certain. It's very human. I want to be certain before I make a decision. That's poison to any kind of change of speed.
I have only been there a short time, but I'd like to talk to you because if you have the answer, I need it.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly move on to our next question because I won't cover all of them. I talked about AI, automation, robotics, emerging technologies, right? We all experiment. We all have emerging technologies in the lab, on pilots, POCs. But the challenge I see in a lot of organizations is how do you scale that? How do you really scale that and show the value? What has worked and has not worked in your organization? Let me start with you, David, and then if I go to Jeff afterwards.
I haven't been there long enough, to be honest with you. I think, we look at La-Z-Boy's and I'm learning this too, La-Z-Boy's very unique in the industry is that we make our own product, we house and distribute our own product, and then we have retail stores that we sell it. And so I see IoT in our retail stores, I see some automation in some of our areas of our business, but I haven't been there long enough to see it, how well it's working or how well it's scaling.
Okay.
We are just tipping our toe in that kind of stuff. And, so it's going to take some time for me and my team to get our arms wrapped around that. But we're just dipping our toe in it.
Okay.
And again, I can't wait to be here in 1 year from now to tell you about how well we're doing.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Well, I might go to your campus, right? Because
Yeah, you're going to be there. That's right. I've invited
I'm gonna be there.
everybody.
I'm ready. I'm going to book my flight. There we go. Jeff?
I'm going to have a little more biased opinion on this just because of the perspective I come from as an architect at one point in my life. I believe standardization in your environments is the key because every time previously when we tried to implement something innovative, when we've tried to do something very cool or innovative, we get it to work one place, but because we don't have the same exact stuff in other places that we need to from an infrastructure, from a platform, from a skill set, whatever it is, it doesn't scale. So it's great that I'm a classic example, and I wish I could pull a specific one from my world but I remember dealing with this in a previous life. They built this wonderful tablet application that was rolled out to all the stores, and only about 25% of the stores could use it correctly. And the reason why is because the bandwidth and the infrastructure in all the stores weren't the same, but they got the greatest, newest stuff out the front end. Mm-hmm. And so the term I always like to say is you don't put a Corvette engine in a Pinto and expect to go run a race. A lot of times we, in the technology world, like to go after the bright, shiny objects, but we don't want to do the dirty work to make those bright, shiny objects
the standards
really
right,
work.
robust.
Yeah. And that's to me, that's the key. And as we have just finished that process, and we're really getting into IoT, where we're about to roll out an IoT platform to 45 plants. And we're able to roll that out in about a 3-week period. So all of a sudden now, I'm looking more like an IT wizard because I already have a standard infrastructure, so I know what to expect when I roll this out, and I know what the expectation and what those people in those plants will see when they start connecting some of these devices to that platform and collecting data. I know what it is because I already have really a standardized environment. So that means I can do this wonderful technology. It's the same thing with blockchain and all these others. If you don't have some of those foundational pieces in there,
governance.
you're just throwing out a wonderful technology. And this is, in the earlier group, I made the statement that bimodal IT doesn't work because you're basically trying to mix two worlds and they're never going to support each other. It's going to be the same issue with blockchain, with automation, with AI and all that, is you do it in a wonderful little pocket, but you're never able to scale it because your environment's not set to scale.
But Jeff, is it safe to say that you might need 3 weeks to go and roll out to those 40 areas, but you may have spent 3 months, 6 months beforehand getting the standards and the technology and the connectivity.
I've
the
spent
security.
5 years,
5 years
getting
right?
us to this point, and that's that's kind of the point. Is you
no one
have to
sees that,
think,
right?
you have to think with that mind in end, that get to that point, because that's the key to get there. Is it's not. I've seen too many CIOs, CTOs, chief architects fall on the sword because they go and get that great technology, and I have a experience with someone going out and buying a very large big data platform and putting a whole lot of data on it, and it's still not working 3.5 years after they left.
Okay.
And that's the key part, is if you don't have all that infrastructure and all the other stuff necessary to make it successful, you're basically throwing money into something that looks really neat, and it's a great shelf, something to put on the shelf afterwards, but you really don't use it after the fact.
Yeah. Klaus, I have a different question for you, if I may. In terms of, you have many stakeholders, you have your business stakeholders, you have many within your IT stakeholders as well. How do you convince your business stakeholder, because that came out a few times in the conversation I had today. How do you convince your business stakeholders to invest in ideas which, by the way, sometimes they're not going to work, sometimes they're going to work, sometimes they will scale and not scale, but you need their sponsorship and support to make it happen so that it's just not in a lab, but it's really being in the field, being tested, and not be worried that actually if it doesn't work, obviously we can't do it too many times, no one's going to get fired.
The answer is very simple and very complicated at the same time. You have to learn to speak the business's language. You have to be able to tell your stories in terms of how does that change, influence, good or bad, right? The business. You actually have to understand, you have to speak the language. If you don't take the time to sit down and not talk about IT, you're going to have a problem. There was when I worked for IBM some years back, there was a colleague of mine over a glass of wine in San Francisco. She told me, Klaus, you're being stupid. I'm like, this was the first time in 10 years somebody told me I was being stupid. What do you mean? Yeah, no, you're being stupid. What do you mean I'm being stupid? Yeah, you insist on telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yeah, of course, what else would I do? Yeah, that's stupid. Well, what's stupid about that? I mean, I have to tell them the whole story. Yeah, you're being stupid because you're being that complicated guy. Because you're telling them all the stuff they don't want to hear. You have to translate all the stuff you know into a very simple message, a story, if you will, that's meaningful to the people you talk to.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, you just
so they can relate to it and they can understand.
So they relate to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to meet them where they are. You cannot expect them to meet you where you are. Okay. And so the second ingredient, which is also simple but complicated, is you have to be genuine and you have to be trustworthy. And that's harder than people think.
Yeah.
You actually have to invest in your brains to be both genuine and trustworthy. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere.
Great. That's a great answer. I have one more question for everyone, but before I ask my question, is there any question that you have? I have time for one more question from the audience. If you want to just put your hand up and let's ask these guys. And make it really hard, guys. Make it really hard, I say. Anyone? Anyone? Okay. Well, in that case, I'm gonna ask the question. 2 words, only 2 words, that defines your digital transformation and your initiatives. Just 2 words. Let's start off on the left. Not 3, not 1, just 2. 2 words.
Okay. I think you had a pretty good graphic during your keynote that I really latched onto, and those 2 words were speed and agility.
Okay.
I really think that would, if I focus on those 2 things, I'll be able to upsell. Right? And I go to leadership about spending taxpayers' money wisely. If I could talk about speed and agility the same way as Amazon and Alibaba has done it, I think I'll be successful.
Right. Thank you very much.
What's the question? Ask the question one more time.
2 words that defines your digital strategy, AI initiatives in your organization. 2 words.
Digital strategy and AI, all right.
Yeah.
Slow and steady. Now remember the story about slow and steady, right? The tortoise and the hare wins the race.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Great.
APIs everywhere. At this point, we have about 750 APIs in production, and it costs us only about $4,500 a piece from inception to production. That's how you get there.
Right. That was more than 2 words. That was not 2 words.
The definition was 2 words.
There's about 4 or 5 extra words on top of that, but we'll accept it. Jeff?
Patient persistence.
Patience and persistence.
Because, first of all, we like to talk about it as going fast and being innovative, but the great innovation really doesn't happen overnight. It happens many years before the innovation occurs. It's all the pre-work and all the other stuff, and you have to be patient with it. You have to do it right. And sometimes that's the hardest part, is because we all want to be the IT hero.
Yeah.
IT hero is easy. You can make the splash on the front page, you can get on the magazines, and in 6 months or 18 months when all crashes and burns. And I learned that from the .com world. I watched many IT heroes build platforms and companies and do it with great grandeur, and then watch them burn out very quickly. and many of them didn't survive. What I learned, though, is I learned that you have to kind of have that patience and persistence, and then at the right time, that's when you break through. And that's when you have innovation.
Right.
Is you've done all the other stuff to get there, so that when the time's right, you can be innovative. But if you don't do those things, you lose that innovation capability. Because what you then do is you got lucky. And there are some great companies that are lucky. But a lot of them, if you look at the good ones, and we had some of them up here, if you look at Amazon, what made Amazon great was they understood behavior of their customer, but if you look at the way they run their supply chain and their process for supply chain, you notice that Walmart was the other guy who was up there for digital. Mm-hmm. Do you know who runs all of Walmart's, ran all of Walmart's websites and e-commerce for the first 5 to 7 years? Amazon. Why? Because they could run it better. And they understood that. Then Walmart brought it back in-house and started building their platform. But at the time, their focus was, we knew we couldn't do it, because they tried, and they failed about 99, 2000. They tried to do a website and e-commerce, and they failed pretty badly. But they went back to Amazon and said, hey, we want you to provision us. Toys R Us did the same thing, because they knew they couldn't do that. Amazon's really good. What makes it really innovative is that their back end is very consistent, and they do things the same everywhere.
That's interesting, and I was just thinking about the point this gentleman, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, and the example you gave, the CEO and the storyteller, about your salespeople and your IT organization. I work with many clients, and there is this, and your point is very much related actually to this, is that sometimes the exception is the norm. The fact that the salesperson says, I want this today and not in 5 days down the line because I have to go and do this deal, actually no longer is an exception, it's the norm, because the market has shifted. So it's rethinking about the overall organization and saying, now actually it's not an exception, it's a norm. So how do we now better meet it and really tackle that question ahead? And in that journey, what I found is that there are going to be people who are not going to be part of that journey, because they just don't want to be part of that journey, right? They're just not ready for that journey. And helping them find work that they could really do within the organization that's going to add value. And then also reinventing other people and helping them to take a step up, right? And saying, this is a new way of working. And it's not just about technology, by the way. It's about how you operate, how you communicate. And having that, I can't remember who said the shared value, I think there was a shared, yourself, Klaus, the vision, right? The vision of working together as one, not as two departments, and so on. So with that note, I want to say a big thank you to all of you guys. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll talk more.